My grandfather's clock has always been the silent giant of our family home. It's a beautiful, imposing piece of dark mahogany, a relic from a time I can barely imagine. For as long as I can remember, it stood dormant in the corner of the living room, its pendulum still, its hands frozen at 3:15. My grandmother told me it stopped to the very moment Grandpa passed away, and no one ever had the heart to try and fix it. It was more than a clock. It was a monument to him. But last Tuesday, something changed. I was in the kitchen making a late-night cup of tea, the house quiet and settled. And then I heard it, a slow, deliberate tick-tock. My heart jumped into my throat. I crept into the living room, my eyes wide, and stared at the clock. The long, golden pendulum was swinging, graceful and steady. The second hand was sweeping across the clock face with an unnerving purpose. It was working. After 20 years of silence, it had come back to life. I didn't know what to make of it. I called my mom, my voice trembling. She told me to stop being silly, that maybe the old springs had just settled, or that I'd imagined it, but I knew I hadn't. The sound, that deep, resonant ticking, filled the house with a presence it hadn't had before. It was comforting in a way, like Grandpa's heartbeat echoing through the years, but it was also deeply unsettling. Why now? Why after all this time? The next morning, we got the call. My great-uncle, Grandpa's younger brother, had passed away peacefully in his sleep. We were all saddened, of course, but he was old and had been unwell for some time. I didn't connect the two events at first. It was just a strange, sad coincidence. The clock continued to tick, its rhythm becoming a new part of the house's soundscape. I started to get used to it. A few weeks later, my friend Alex came over. He was a history buff and absolutely loved the clock. He spent ages admiring the craftsmanship, running his fingers over the carved wood. "It's incredible that it started working again on its own," he said, peering at the swinging pendulum. We spent the evening catching up, laughing about old times. As he was leaving, he stood by the clock one last time. "Seriously," he said, "this thing is magical." That night, I woke up to an unnerving silence. The house was completely still. The ticking had stopped. I got out of bed, a cold dread seeping into my bones. I walked into the living room and there it was, silent once more. The pendulum was motionless. The hands were frozen. This time, at 10:52. My phone rang just as the sun was starting to rise. It was Alex's mom. There had been a car accident late last night. Alex didn't make it. That's when the horrifying truth began to dawn on me. I thought back to what my grandma had said all those years ago. The clock didn't just stop when Grandpa died. It had asterisk starred. Asterisk ticking a few days before he passed. My mom had been just a kid, but she remembered being annoyed by the sudden noise, and then being terrified by the silence that followed. The clock wasn't a memorial, it was an omen. It only moves 4 people who were about to die. The silence in the house was now heavier, more oppressive than it had ever been. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. Every shadow seemed to stretch and writhe. The clock stood there, a silent judge, holding its secrets. I've considered getting rid of it, smashing it to pieces. Anything to escape the terrible knowledge it held, but it was my grandfather's. It felt like a betrayal. So I tried to live with it. I tried to forget. For months, the clock remained still. Life, despite the grief, moved on. I started to convince myself I was being paranoid, connecting dots that weren't there. It was all a tragic, horrible coincidence. That's what I told myself, day after day. The silence of the clock became my reassurance. As long as it was still, everything was okay. Then, yesterday evening, while I was watching a movie, I heard it. A single, gut-wrenching tick. My blood ran cold. I paused the movie, my breath catching in my chest. Tick. Tock. It was back. The pendulum was swinging again. A slow, merciless metronome counting down to some unknown tragedy. I felt sick. Who was it this time? My mom? My grandma? A friend? The not knowing was a special kind of torture. I couldn't sleep all night. I just sat on the sofa, staring at that clock, watching its hands crawl around the face. Every tick was a hammer blow against my sanity. Who was this for? The question pounded in my head. I went through my contacts, wanting to call everyone I knew, to warn them. But how could I? What would I even say? My haunted grandfather clock is ticking, so you might want to be careful. They'd think I had lost my mind. This morning, I decided I couldn't just sit here and wait for the phone to ring. I had to do something. I stood in front of the clock, my heart pounding. It was just a machine, Primena told myself. Wood, brass, and gears. But I knew it was more than that. I watched the second hand sweep past the 12, then the 1, then the 2. Its rhythmic motion was hypnotic, terrifying. And then I saw it, something I'd never noticed before. In the polished glass of the clock's face, I could see my own reflection. My face was pale, my eyes wide with fear, but as I stared, I realized the reflection wasn't the only thing I was seeing. Behind my own image, etched faintly into the glass, almost invisible, was a name. It was a name I hadn't seen in years. A name primera adeneti, even thought about. My own. I took a step back, my breath catching in my throat. It was impossible. I looked again, closer this time, my nose almost touching the cold glass. The light had to be playing tricks on me. But no, there it was, spelled out in an old, faint script. My name. The clock wasn't ticking for my mom, or my grandma, or a friend. It was ticking for me. The silence, when it comes, won't be a phone call. It'll just be the end. The clock is still ticking, and I'm just sitting here, listening to it count down my final hours. Thanks for listening to my story. It's a strange world we live in, full of things we can't explain. If you enjoyed this, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more content. Stay safe out there.